wabarakatuh. At this occasion, I would like to give explanation and describe about the first material related to the quantitative research in English education. Now, let's start with understanding the concepts of the research itself. We would like to discuss and find the definitions and also the coverage of the research, especially the meaning of the research. As we know that research is actually a process of analysis which is conducted objectively and systematically, and the process of how to do the analysis should be recorded and should be controlled and also observe. So observation that is based on the control, and also the functions of the analysis which is done by control observation can be used to develop the generalization, principle or theories to at least for the prediction and also for the ultimate controls of events. This is the research, the meaning of the research. So at least there are three keywords in a process of research. The first is questions or problem, and then the second is systematic approach, and the last is the answer. So this is the meaning of the research, and common people or researchers sometimes do the process simultaneously. We can see from the article they already written in a particular journals of the article that consists of three keywords: question, systematic approach, and answer. Next is about the characteristics of the research itself. The research can be conducted because we have an issue which is no solution yet. So research should be based on the goal is to solve the problem, because all ideas that is contributed to the development of principles and the theory is seen from the problem itself, whether the problem is already been solved or not. And the next is the characteristic of the research. It is for prediction of the future occurrences, especially for the development of the principles, the theories, and generalizations. That is the functions and also the characteristic. And the third, research is actually should be able to observe and should be based on empirical evidence. Observable observation means empirical evidence, so should be based on the real data and should be empirically convincing based on the data. And the next is about the process. The characteristic of the research should be accurate. So the observation should be done accurately, and the results of the research should be reported descriptively. And the next characteristics, research should be always related to the process of gathering the data. Sometimes it might be from the primary or first-hand source of the data, or can be from the existing of the data because of the particular purposes. So that is the general characteristics of the research based on the way it is gathered of the data. Next is about the process, because the research is usually quantitatively is usually not taking the whole population. So research is just only for some samples. for taking the sample, so the research should be done randomly and unsystematic. It is in quantitative research. Now, because of the process of the research itself, which needs very systematic and careful and comprehensive, then it needs expertise. Expertise means the researcher has to be equipped, him or herself, of the knowledge about how to do the research, and also knowledge about not only cognitive aspect but also the practical aspects of doing the research. And the next characteristic is that research is to be objective and logical in applying every possible test to validate the procedure, data collection, and conclusion. So it is a matter of the process. The process should be valid. So we know that in the research process we have two validity, internal validity and external validity. So the process of validating the procedure from the beginning, and then the procedure of collecting data until taking the conclusion rigidly, those are called internal validity. So a researcher has to follow all the processes to achieve the internal validity. And next is research. Characteristic of the research is to find answer for unsolved problems. Yeah, this is to support the first characteristics, that is solving the problem. The main goal of the research itself is solving the problem. So the answer is for the final goal is to answer for giving the unsolved problem. And the research, because this is the scientific process, so should be reported and recorded carefully, because we have to convince of the process of the results. So it should be reported and recorded carefully. And the last characteristic of the research, all process of the research needs courage, needs bravery, and also spirit of achieving the answer, or to achieve the goal of the research. Okay, those are the characteristics of the research. Next is the purposes of the research. When we understand the purposes of the research, we have to also understand the types and the kinds of the research itself. Now, first is the fundamental and pure research. This is based on the types of the research. So we can group the research based on the purpose is for fundamental and pure research goal. This is to apply usually research that which is conducted in a laboratory, and usually it should be done carefully for taking the sample and so on. And also the activity should be related to the very specific area, and this fundamental or pure research is good for exact sciences. Okay, that is the purpose of the research based on the first type of the research, that is fundamental or pure research. The second purpose of the research based on the application of the theory, we have called it applied research. Applied research, the goal of the applied research is to improve a product or a process, all the things related to the improvement, or testing the theory or the concepts in actual situation or the actual problems. And it is also to develop generalization as the results of the tests, of the testing the theory, and also making generalization or making the principles based on the test of the theory. That is called applied research. And it is mostly related to the educational research to test the theory. So the students can determine the way how to behave in educational setting. That is the second purpose of the research based on the types of the research. Now, the third purpose of the research is seen based on the types of the action of the research. So, action research, we call it the application of certain strategy in the classroom, but it is quite different with the applied research. Action research is much more on immediate application. So it is for the development of the theory. It is not for the development of the theory nor the general application. It is to evaluate the problem here and now in the local setting, and it is to find the finding is its finding is to be evaluated in terms of local applicability, not in terms of universal validity. Therefore, it is to improve the classroom practices. So it is to combine the research function with teacher growth in such qualities as objectivity, skill in research processes, habit of thinking, ability to work harmoniously, and professional spirit. So action research, the difference here is not to test the theory, but to improve all the problems in the classroom. That is action research. So the goal of the research based on the purpose of giving the action of the research. Next is assessment. Assessment is a kind of research. The goal is to have a fact-finding activity that describe condition that exist at particular time. So this is another types of the research. The goal is to have a fact-finding activity and then describe the condition. We call it assessment. So in this assessment of the research, we have no hypothesis, of course, and no variable relationship which are examined, and no recommendation for action which are suggested in action research. So assessment is really just have a fact or finding activity and to describe the condition. And the fifth types of the research which reflecting the goal is evaluation research. Evaluation research is consider the application of the finding and apply some judgment of the effectiveness or perhaps social utility or desirability of a product or process or a program. So it's quite little differences between evaluation and assessment, but evaluation much more on seeing the application of a certain effectiveness of a strategy, perhaps in teaching, and then see the effect and the process, whether the process the strategy which is used before effective or not. So evaluation here is conducted after a certain application. It might be a program or strategy, or perhaps a product of certain thing. The example in education, for example here, how well is the science program developing the competencies that have been agreed upon by faculty, curriculum committee? Are the facility and library adequate, and so forth? So evaluation much more broader because we have to see the effectiveness of certain implementation, while assessment is just fact finding and find the judgment. In assessment we don't have any judgment, but in evaluation we have imply or implication of the judgment because of the evaluation. And the next is descriptive research in general. We categorize this can be for evaluation or descriptive or assessment both are part of descriptive research. There's another terms in quantitative research. So as long as the research do not use or it doesn't use manipulated variable to be analyzed and doesn't have any hypothesis, so we call it descriptive research. And the variable which are related are selected or observed, it can be used ex post facto or explanatory observational or causal comparative research. So if the variable that exists are selected and observed, it uses ex post facto or explanatory observational or causal comparative research. A research that only try to find relationship to compare more than one variables, so it needs hypothesis. So if it just search one variable, it does not need hypothesis. So descriptive research is just only an umbrella which cover many types of the research inside, including assessment, evaluation, and also sometimes ex post facto research. Okay, this is the explanation of giving the description of the meaning of research in general, especially on the meaning of the research itself and also the types and the purposes in a quantitative research. Thank you very much.